The Slayers have been a bit bored recently, so I took a little browse through the Book of Grudges to see if there was anything for them to do. That's when I came across the Forest Elgi Grudge. Destroy 2 elf factions and take their homes. The boys could not contain themselves. So tighten your axe chains, have a good stretch, and get ready as I attempt to take this angry band of gingers to the vile forest of Athel Loren to liberate it from the tyranny of elf rule. We'll be using nothing but slayers, and if it were up to me, killing nothing but elves, but we've got to get to Athel Loren first. Stepping up to the task of elf genocide is Malakai, a slayer himself, but also an inventor. His campaign starts up in the frozen wastelands of Norska, where he drops one of my new favourite threats.
Oh shit, I'll make you into a snowman.
Now first things first, as this is a Slayer-only playthrough, we must get rid of everything that is not Slayer. Now Malakai does start with Gotrek and Felix in his army, and while Gotrek is a perfect fit, Felix is a human man, but there's no Gotrek without Felix, so we'll allow it. We'll roll into our first battle here against the Maggotkin, with the only unit that we actually have being the Doomseekers. These are a very strong anti-infantry slayer, but we do have our heroes. There goes one of them. Cheers for ruining the shot, Felix. You're present also is, of course, Malakai himself, who's actually a ranged slayer. He wants to stay out of the melee, which may be difficult given that we're quite outnumbered in this fight. But that doesn't bother Gotrek as he charges in along with all the Slayer boys, who should be pretty good at taking down these Nurgle units with their lack of armor. But Nurgle units are fairly tough and do take a fair pounding down, so we're going to need a little secret weapon courtesy of old Malakai, who's currently sniping away at the big old lord. He's really good for that. But you'll notice an ominous shadow appears, and that is the shadow of the Great Thunder Barge that Malakai is able to call to his aid during a battle for a short space of time. This thing is basically a damage powerhouse that just constantly does damage to anything near it. You don't really need to give it orders, you just fly it over and it drops bombs and shoots everything. It's pretty damn horrible. With the help of this flying behemoth, we're able to wear down the enemies much faster, and that gets our first battle in the bag, setting us up to take their settlement, which is our first step towards building that massive Slayer army to go and ruin Elves with. Now Malakai does have his own kind of horde mechanic with the airship that allows you to be a self-sustaining settlement yourself. And at tier 2 of the airship, we will be able to unlock normal Slayers, Slayer Pirates, and the Dragon Slayer hero. And then at tier 3 we can get Giant Slayers and Doomseekers. So it shouldn't take us long to fill out our Slayer army once we get to tier 2. I'm going to push round to that last Maggotkin settlement, and then bada bing, that's ours as well, and we've got our first province in the bag. But what do you know, we've now got our tier 2 settlement available, so roll on the Slayers. Although the recruitment is a little slow on the Spirit of Grungni, that's the airship, but we're well on our way. We're putting the skill points into the right places, buffing up the Slayers with Grimnir's heirs. Gottrek's preparing himself for the absolute massacre of elves by taking the Elf Slayer skill, and I decided my Slayer boys needed to put all this into practice and have a little warm-up of elf killing. So I looked to Malakai's Adventures, one of his mechanics that can reward you with all sorts of stuff to buff up your army or particular units with, but we don't care about that. As we all know, the best part about fighting elves is getting to kill the elves. We don't care about the loot. We're just here to slowly watch them die. That's all we really want. But in order to access the battle to kill all the elves, we have to do these sub-objectives to get there. So this one, fight an enemy army with a unit of cavalry. This one, fight 2 battles in a region with mountain climate. Complete this dwarf refugee dilemma. So we just need to do a few of these, and then we can finally kill elves. Yes! Now this little dilemma one is pretty easy, it's just a little waypoint we have to go to, so I'm on my way to that when local bitchman Azazel declares war on me, so now we've got an actual enemy to worry about. But we're gonna just ignore that for now and crack on getting this dilemma done, where we find some of our dwarf bros have been burned out of their mountain hold by a dragon. Sound familiar? Hobbit. Ultimately, I helped those boys out and find them a new home for some campaign buffs for myself. Now I've completed 2 of these Malakai adventure missions, the other one being to construct a certain building, and I'm going to try and go for this one to defeat cavalry next, because it should be pretty quick and easy. To help me out with this task, Throg has very kindly declared war on me, and is now bringing 2 armies to come and get me. My army is growing nicely though. I can get these Grudge Settler Slayers that have armor sundering, alongside my massive normal and pirate Slayers. Now I have positioned myself in a bit of a ballsy position between 2 armies, but luckily only Throg comes after me with his full stack, so it looks like Troll is back on the menu, boys. Now in this battle we do happen to have a nice bit of high ground to take advantage of, allowing us to fight downhill and forcing the enemy to fight uphill, which does give us some slight advantages. We also have the slight advantage of having the Spirit of Grungni airship, which does have this ability, which is basically a massive anti-large ballista. I'm going to use that on Throg, taking his health from 7,000 down to 4,500. Now the beauty of dwarfs being so short
Short?
is that they're easy to shoot over if the enemy is much taller than them, which in the case of trolls is a problem for them. So my Slayer pirates are able to lay their shots into the trolls, which allows us to break them pretty easily, and then it's just up to my axe infantry to mash their axe infantry, and obviously they lose. Although I somehow did manage to lose my Grudge Slayers, scheisse. But we've got Throg's army beaten down, and we gained this Slayer Ward auxiliary, reducing Slayer upkeep by 20%, which could not be more perfect for us, and actually saves us about 500 gold. From here, I go and bonk Throg on the head to get rid of him and his army, and then push into their territory to take their settlements. But alas, there's two armies there to try and put a stop to me, but with a Pyrrhic victory on my side and only small losses from it, I'm just going to take the auto-resolve on this one. I then get a mission to unlock the legendary Slayer hero, who would be perfect for our army, and all I need to do is recruit 8 units of Slayers. Now with
Garagrim Ironfist,
who is the
son of Ongrim!
our army would grow even stronger. I then proceeded to take the 2 of Throg's settlements nearby and removed him mostly from existence. We can now get one of Malakai's unique skills as well to give 15% missile resistance to all Slayer units, perfect for taking on those cowardly elf bows. Frightened of my unrelenting manly Slayer power, Astrogoth Iron Knob declares war on us, but we're not afraid because we just got the airship to tier 3, which means Giant Slayers and Doom Seekers. So this is where our army is about to get particularly disgusting. We'll have normal Slayers and Giant Slayers for any anti-large we might need, and then the Doom Seekers for any anti-infantry because they're pretty savage at that, and then the Pirates for some ranged and a little bit of melee power as well. It doesn't take long for a Chaos Dwarf army to arrive, but luckily we've got our Slayer Lord Phil Granite Hand ready to defend, and it's mostly against goblins, so it's no bother at all. And with this being a Total War Warhammer game, the fun never starts, so here comes Wulfric to declare war on me as well because I need more enemies. I decide to try and push the Chaos Dwarfs back a little bit, taking one of their settlements before I need to go and deal with Norska, who's inevitably going to come for me. Which of course they do with 2 full stacks coming my way, so I rush on back there to take them on, and I actually decide just to charge into them to see what my Slayer army can really do, and apparently it can defeat 2 full Norscan armies with a Pyrrhic victory, so I'll take it. And Malakai can now get less upkeep for Slayers and more weapon strength for them, so our army is getting juiced up by the turn. I now recruit the final unit into my army, the Goblin Hewer, which is an artillery of sorts, but it's run by Slayers, so it's still a Slayer unit. Azazel's faction shows his face by sending an army after my settlement, but we're able to defend it with the garrison. Now with a little bit of peace and quiet, I can finish off this adventure. I fought a unit with cavalry by now, obviously, so now we're able to go and smash some elf faces directly off their stupid heads. So our Slayer boys are ready and raring to go, especially for the chance to slay some filthy elves. They come at us with their chariots first and foremost, pretty much suiciding them in so they don't really last long. We move up as quick as possible though, getting into the melee, our Goblin Hewer firing many an axe in. You see them flying in, this thing is pretty disgusting. Our Doom Seekers absolutely perfect for mashing their way through all the elven infantry. And then it was just a case of trying to get round the back, getting after the missiles, stopping them from shooting us up too much, because with no armor as Slayers we are a little bit vulnerable to that despite our missile resistance. There was also a couple of dragons that arrived that were part of the objective to defeat. We had to kill off both of those. The Goblin Hewer made short work of one of them. The missiles from the Slayer pirates also helped out. But overall, it was an absolute massacre, although they put up a fair old fight and we took a little pounding ourselves. We then finished the adventure off, which meant we got some buffs to our cannons, which was obviously completely useless, but we didn't care. We got to kill elves. We're happy. And Malakai got another skill point to increase the replenishment of Slayers and more upkeep reduction for them. God damn. I continued to improve my army where possible by taking the Grudge Settler Slayers or the Regiment of Renown units, so there was always room to improve. Along the way here, Azazel came at us at the lair of the Troll King again, but luckily old Phil Granite Hand was there to defend. But this one we had to fight. There was 3 lots of boys coming from 3 different directions at me, so I decided to stiffen up on the choke points and try to beat them off. And those are the gayest tactical sentences I've ever said. I think that's what fighting Azazel does to you, isn't it? Thankfully, we were able to repel these 2 lots of forces, and we had enough left in the tank to be able to finish Azazel off when he came at us from behind. Yep, that's enough of this battle. Now, in a bid to make it harder for the Chaos Dwarfs to get to me, I took 1 more of their settlement and then gifted it to Kislev in the hope that they wouldn't dare trespass on Kislev just to get to me. Over this time, I was still being attacked by Norscan armies and Azazel armies, and for the most part, I was able to fend them off. I decided I was never going to get anywhere with these two constantly attacking me, so I decided to push on Azazel because he only has a settlement or two, and when he saw my Slayer army coming, he went a-running with a lot of his boys, so it was a pretty easy take, and then we just bonked his army on the head, and that was him mostly dealt with. So this was good progress on getting rid of an enemy that had been bothering me. Now I just had Norska and the Chaos Dwarfs, but no, of course it's not that simple. As local Chaos Waste hardman, Archaon the Everchosen decides to declare war on me, bringing his vassals, so for every one faction I take out, another two come after me, it seems. At this rate, we were never going to get to Athel Loren. On the plus side, I'd now got the Honoured by Grimnir skill point from Malakai, giving melee attack, weapon strength, and a physical resistance to all my Slayers. Alongside Garagrim getting his Slayer Oath skill, giving 10% speed to the army, and then I had a technology of the same name which did pretty much the same thing, giving 20% speed to all our Slayers. So we were quickly becoming very fast for a dwarf. So with everyone seemingly coming after us in this area, I decided just to get on with it and go to Athel Loren with my main army, not really worrying too much about my settlements, just whatever happens to them happens. I'll try and defend them, but as long as we get to Athel Loren and kill elves, we're happy. So we ran ourselves across the Empire, trespassing on everyone in the way, Festus, Karl, anyone who was there. All the while trying desperately to defend my home territory, which was being attacked by Archaon and by his vassal. Norska was still a problem as well. We were able to fend off some of these fights and win some of these battles, but we did lose settlements here and there. I did have to cheat a little bit, recruiting some regiments of renown that weren't Slayers, but just trying to keep their settlements alive long enough for us to get to Athel Loren. We did have our boy Phil Granithand. He was still defending with a small Slayer army, and it turned out my whole Chaos Dwarf not trespassing on Kislev thing didn't really work out so well. But as I say, we were able to fend off a lot of these armies, so we did okay. Although money was getting pretty tight, as you can see, we kept moving across the Empire and finally arrived at Athel Loren. And this was it. This was our moment to finally massacre the elves and free Athel Loren. Now, of course, there was many an elf army around, so we did need to be careful. So I sent Felix in to spy for us, because he's much better at that with those human legs. Little dwarf legs don't work well in forests. But in taking this on, we were taking on both Talsin and Arguelon, so two big factions to worry about. We'd have to take care not to end up surrounded by like 5 armies. But attacking this first settlement, that shouldn't be a problem, so we're going to declare our war here on Arguelon and attack Waterfall Palace. Does have 2 armies there and a garrison as well, so not the easiest take. But of course, we were going to fight this so we could watch all the elves die. So I sent the boys in, a lot of them on one side. I put only 1 unit of Pirate Slayers on the other side to attract a lot of attention, which it did, and then just sent everything else through the other side. So just hitting this left side with massive overwhelming force, sending in the heroes, sending in the Doomseekers, the Giant Slayers, everything, whilst trying to get good matchups as well, like the anti-large Giant Slayers going after the tree, the anti-infantry Doomseekers smashing the infantry in the face. It was important to try and do as well as possible in this battle so that we weren't too beaten up to continue on for the next battle, which honestly wasn't easy because of the amount of missiles and our lack of armor and weakness to missiles, but we were doing okay. Gotrek was having a whale of a time trying to topple trees by chopping at their ankles. He obviously succeeded. We also had help from Malakai's Thunder Barge, which did a good bit of damage, but there was no real clumped up troops, so it wasn't amazing. Most of the killing was done by the hard-working Slayer boys themselves, and overall we did come away with a pretty nice victory, not losing too much in the process. And with that, this stinking tree was now ours to hopefully chop up later to make some money on. Speaking of money, Garagrim just saved us some with Dutiful Leader, reducing upkeep for Slayers by 15%. Very nice. From here, I pushed on to the undefended Vols Anvil settlement. There was only 1 large Arguelon army nearby, so we weren't too worried about them, but we might need to keep an eye out for any of Orion's armies. Wanting to keep the momentum going though, I decided to push on the crag halls of Findal, even though I could have sat there and replenished a little longer, but this fight didn't look too bad. I could take a Pyrrhic victory auto-resolve, but I'd lose my Giant Slayers. I decided though that I don't want to fight in this stupid settlement again, I actually just want to fight them in the open field. So I besieged them and tried to get them to come out to fight me, but I was aware that Orion had an army right there in the Oak of Ages, although I didn't see this little army hidden down here. So I thought if Orion comes after me and I need to retreat, I might have to fight 2 full stacks because I can get away from the garrison and I can handle that. But 3 full stacks? Not sure. And of course those 2 armies came to assist Arguelon, which meant I'd be fighting 3.5 full stacks. And while I don't necessarily think it was impossible, I think it would be a little too hefty on our losses. So I retreat, but we're still attacked by 2.5 full stacks, but that sounds much more manageable. We've got a nice open field. Let's go! For this battle, I made use of Vanguard deployment, putting the Doomseekers and some other units up there to try and get on top of this first army as quickly as possible, because if we can take them out before the other 2 or 3 arrive, we might just have a shot at pulling this off. So we beelined for that first army, getting all over them as quickly as possible. Our boys absolutely massacre the infantry so quickly, they're so buffed up, it's insane. Now naturally the key here was keeping these 2 armies from being able to do too much, so as they arrived in, I would greet them with Doomseekers. This would allow me to pin them in and stop the missile units at least from being able to use their missiles, which were of great threat to us. Now as their other army started to pour in, we were pretty much done with the first army. The Doomseekers especially were absolutely racking up the kills and damage, which is obviously very nice to see against elves. And that was really needed given how outnumbered we were in this one, but the boys fought hard. They didn't care whether it was elf or tree they needed to kill, they just kept killing. And we were undoubtedly helped, of course, by the Thunder Barge that came and assisted, especially as everything had come into the map and was all in one big clump. It just had an absolute field day, although it was targeted by a lot of the missiles and didn't last too long, honestly. Most of the work did come from the Slayer units themselves, and it's pretty crazy how much they can do. They just kept on churning their way through the elves, routing a lot of them off the map, getting rid of Durthu. But it's pretty crazy as we came into this battle with 1,000 troops and left with about half. They came in with 3,500 and left with about the same as us. And like I mentioned, most of that was in the Doomseers, racking up hundreds of kills, thousands of damage, and still having 3/4 of their health left. I did lose 1 unit of Doomseekers though, and a few other units, but we beat up most of the armies in the area now, so it's kind of clearing the way for us to push on and finish off the rest of Athel Loren. Back in the homeland, Phil Granite Hand was doing Grimnir's work, fending off the various stinking Chaos armies. Now at this point in Athel Loren, we had to retreat back, unable to take the crag halls of Findal for now, but we're going to recruit, replenish, and try to get back there as quickly as possible before they can build up any more defenses. While we're doing this though, Orion does come after Vol's Anvil with a full army, although we do have a reasonable garrison there. It could do some damage, so I decide to fight this rather than taking a decisive defeat. And the enemy army very kindly puts all of their missile units in Vanguard deployment and charges them straight at us, which allows us to actually get a hold of them and beat them up a little bit, all while their melee units are nowhere to be seen. So we were able to actually beat up their missile units a fair bit, which is definitely going to help us out if we have to fight them in a minute. Now I've been recruiting, I've got some new Slayers, I've got the Regiment of Renowned Doomseekers to replace those normal ones that died, and luckily for me these dummy elves have left the crag halls of Findal now undefended, so I decide to go for it, and I can get a decisive victory or to resolve my army, not quite fully healed, but I'll take it so that we can just get rid of this big tree and its big garrison, nice and easy. At this point I expected Orion to retaliate with his full stack here, but he just went back to his tree and Arguelon disappeared as well, so it started to feel like the elves were giving up. Sadly though, Archaon wasn't giving up as he kept coming at us with armies, the Chaos Dwarfs as well. Things weren't looking so good at home, despite Phil's valiant defending. And this got considerably worse as Archaon came after Sjöktraken, which didn't have a bad garrison and did have Phil and all his Slayers, but sadly, even though I did fight this to try and win it, I couldn't do it, and that meant the end of Phil. Let's get some F comments for Phil. Thanks, Phil. On the upside, I managed to get an accidental ambush on a small band of elves, so killing them cheered me up. And along the way here, Orion had come and taken Vol's Anvil off me. It only had a beaten up garrison, so he took that easy. But now, I had him where I wanted him, in a straight up 1v1 with my goddamn Slayer murderous army. So we got rid of him, reclaimed Vol's Anvil, went to the Oak of Ages, bonked all the elves on the head we found there, and we'd nearly done it now. We were at the last settlement of Athel Loren. Then it would all be ours. Orion and his clowns would then be gone, and Durthu only had a settlement or two left scattered around. So I made my play and pushed on the Kingsglade, where they had a pretty pathetic army there, to be honest. It was all missiles. And of course I fought this battle just for the pleasure of wiping out Orion's faction. It went pretty much the same as the last time I fought on this map. We just ran them through all over the place, killing them down to every single last little elf. Glorious. And with that, Athel Loren was now ours, Talsin was gone, Arguelon though still hanging on just about with this little settlement. So I sent Malakai and his army over there to get rid of it, but someone else had beaten me to it. And in that time, those cheeky Arguelon bitches had snuck in and retaken Kingsglade with but a Lord and Ariel. Now I had a second Lord with a unit just running around in that area too, and they decided to come after them, setting up an epic final battle to this story. Now these were the anti-large grudge settling Slayers with armor sundering, so they were nothing to scoff at, and we had a Demon Slayer Lord as well. And these two units were honestly perfect for taking down their targets. The Slayers got all over Ariel, who is large and had no armor with their armor sundering, and the Demon Slayer Lord, well, let's be honest, when was a dwarf ever going to lose to an elf in single combat? Come on now. So we absolutely chopped them down and had Arguelon's final army fully defeated. With that, they were erased from the history books, and that had completed our grudge, striking it from the book and granting us a special building at the Oak of Ages, which was just perfect. It's a lumber camp, so now we can commit some serious deforestation and turn Athel Loren into profit. Yes! And if you're wondering what happened back home, we just about managed to fend things off and managed to keep maybe half of our kingdom that we left with. Although it was looking a little bleak, but who cares? We've got Athel Loren now. So overall, a Slayer army is incredibly viable and ridiculously strong. Look at the stats on these Doomseekers. 91 weapon strength, 86 melee attack. Disgusting. But there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Thanks to all the patrons who support this channel. And hey, you want some more sweet stuff? Check these bad boys out. I'll see you in the future.